Hello and welcome! Silrace here with World of Warcraft. This is going to be my guide to choosing a covenant. This is my guide. This is how I will go about it. And I hope that this will help somebody else. So let me define what kind of a guide this is before I jump into it. Oh, and background footage is just some gameplay for your distraction. It's not Shadowlands gameplay, it's just World of Warcraft gameplay. For your distraction, okay? So what do I not do for this guide, or in this guide? One, I am not going to go over changing covenants. That is completely out of the equation here. I'm just going to go choosing a covenant, okay? Also, this is not going to be some kind of a full listing of all the abilities for the different classes. No, not even going to list the actual covenant abilities here to try and, give you an overview of what does this ability do for your class and so on. I'm not going to do that. I'm also not going to do some kind of a mathematical differentiation between the covenant abilities. I'm not gonna run mathematical formula over it and try and figure out which one gives you the best damage, okay? I'm not gonna do any of that. What I'm going to do here instead is try to build a framework of questions and answers to help you formulate in your mind of like what is it that gives you the covenant you want to actually follow. Okay? And I am going to help you hopefully a little bit along the way by using myself as an example of basically making question and answering it for myself. Alright, let us dive right in there and start with time. Time is a big question here, because the less time you have to actually play the game, the less time you really should be worrying about picking the exactly correct covenant for your class, because frankly, if you play 2 hours a week, then you will not really be pushing high-end enough stuff, at least not very quickly, where your covenant really makes that massive a difference. For me personally, time is going to be, kind of tight. My studies are still going on. I will not be able to play so much as to push like world firsts or very high-end dungeon or arena ratings anytime soon. As such, time for me is one of the considerations where I'm like, well, I know I will not have the time to do all of those things. So take that into account for yourself. Another thing you really should take into account right from the get-go is that if you just absolutely love the story, love the feel of certain covenant, then you should go for that. Because it changes the zone and the NPCs you actually interact with for your character. And if you make a choice here that you absolutely hate simply because it gives you a good ability, you probably will not like playing that character in the long run, because you will have to go back into the zone you hate, talk to these NPCs you absolutely dislike, so on. So I would recommend at that point, give it serious thought, and if you really get to that, just pick the covenant you really like, okay? Now, as for the other questions, moving on from here, well, what are the things you actually really want from World of Warcraft? What are the things you like to do? And at this point, it's also kind of important to define what are the things you do not want, the things you do not like to do. For me, as an example, well, I know for a fact that I do not care about battle paths, I do not care about transmogs or mount farming. And on the lesser degree, which does not really involve covenants, I do not care about achievements either. So that's already a few things I can take out of my list. Like, when I look at the covenant, I am not gonna browse the mounts, the pets, or essentially the transmogs either, because I don't care. However, you may absolutely care, and that's where you have to weight your opinion differently. You may care about all 3 of those things a lot. So what is it you otherwise seek from World of Warcraft as far as activities go? Well, like I said, I'm not gonna go out my way and hunt transmogs and pets and mounts and so on. But I personally really enjoy PvP. I enjoy leveling characters, which is a little less relevant for Covenants again, but, you know, it's there. And I do enjoy doing some endgame PvE as well. Which is to say that, well, I would love to push, you know, high Mythic Plus, but I already know from my time question that I will not have the time to do that. But I would still like to do some end-game dungeons, maybe even occasional raid. And I would like to do some battlegrounds for sure, maybe even some arenas and such. Okay, so I have to personally wait on those two aspects, and this is where the conundrum already starts happening for me, because I know I would like to do both PvE and PvP, so which way do I tip the scales in terms of Covenant abilities that actually help one versus the other? Because there are some abilities which, taken a specific class, they will help you more on the PvP than they will help you on the PvE. Okay? This is where you personally may have to look at, okay, I do not personally care if, I will give you an example here. If you personally do not care about player versus player at all, you can completely discount the abilities thing for player versus player. As well as the opposite. If you just wanna do arenas and you don't care about endgame raiding, you might be able to just discount the entire aspect of, you know, various abilities that would be for the endgame PvE instead of the PvP. It's where you have to make decisions on abilities and so on. However, there are some other aspects to that questionnaire as well, which is to say, not only, you know, the whole, which ability is better for what, but the next question is, what do you want from a new ability for your class? Because people think of this differently. Some folks just want more damage. But in that case, if you are wanting more damage, does that damage actually fit into your regular damage rotation? Does it, one, replace a spell from that rotation, essentially giving you hopefully a better damage dealing spell in that rotation, or does it simply not fit in at all? Or it could give you another spell towards the end or the beginning or the middle of the rotation to use? Or is it just an optional damage dealing ability for situation X? That is a possibility as well. So what do you are looking for the ability in terms of its function? Another example of this is, or is that ability going to shore a weakness of the class in some fashion? For example, classes which have very little self-healing, is this going to provide a way to heal yourself? Is that going to be useful? I would argue for player versus player that sounds actually kind of useful suddenly. Whereas on player versus environment stuff, when it comes to, for example, DPS classes like a mage, being able to heal yourself is less useful than being able to deal insane amounts of damage to actually finish encounters faster. And this is where you have to start looking at individual abilities in terms of what do they do for your class, how do they do it for the class, and most of all, what does it do for your personal preferred gameplay? Because, as mentioned, if you do not care about PvP, you can disregard all the PvP aspects of the ability. But then you need to start looking, what does it actually do for your PvE? Is it just something neat that you would like to have access to? Sure, go for it. Does it stand out as a, as mentioned, something that actually fixes a weakness in your class? Or tries to at least fix a weakness in your class? Then sure, go for that. Is it something that actually just works perfectly into your typical rotation? And this is where you may have to actually look through the abilities of your class for figuring out what is my typical rotation. If you have played a lot of PFA, you probably know what your class rotation was in PFA, and you can kind of make, you know, thought process on that for the particular ability. Now, in the end, it all comes down to some simple questions. At least for me it does. I have not decided Covenant for all of my classes yet, but I have decided it for at least the 3 classes I know I will be getting to the max level at some point. Well, in some time frame, let's put it that way. And for me, it basically came down to, okay, this is a class where I really want that Covenant. I'm not gonna give you actual examples because I don't want to bias you, but this is my how I have ended up going with it. I knew that this class, let's call it class X, this one is going to go for that Covenant because of the aesthetics and most of all the lore, the feeling of that, because those two fit together. Bam! I don't care what the abilities are, I do not care what the transmogs are, it is that. Let's call the next one class Y, okay? This one, I know I will do PvP on this one. Like, I want to do basically all of my PvP on this class because I like to PvP with this particular class. And so I went and started looking through all the abilities, and then I was like, okay, that ability actually clicks with me. That ability sort of shores up a weakness I have, or rather this class had, for PvP. So I'm gonna go that. And finally, the third one was a simple, okay, well, that Covenant ability makes the most sense, and this class is something I am probably just going to play for fun from time to time. I'm not gonna really do any real activities planned for this particular class. So let's call it a class Z. So I'm just gonna pick this Covenant because I kind of like that ability, and it also sort of fits with the Covenant feel. So that's what I did for the 3 choices I have made, and there is one more at least which I have not decided on at all, of like what will I go, where will I go with this class. I have not. Hopefully this was helpful for you. Hopefully this helps you along the way to make your own decisions for the Covenants. You will have to do some actual research if you want to, you know, deep dive the different abilities. Like I said earlier, I do not want to go through all the abilities here to try and present them as good or bad or evil or whatever else, or ugly, whichever way you want to go about them. I just hope that I was able to provide you with a little bit of a framework and my own examples to help you make the decisions for yourself. So thank you very, very much for watching and listening.